fingers. Oh, yay! Finally. Okay, 2-minute delay. Sorry about that. I don't know what it is about the internet. I have to swap my connections each time, but we're here. My cat is driving me nuts in the background. Does anybody else have helpers? I moved my stuff to do the live, and she came in and started chewing on everything. And then I realized that she was chewing on a fan, like when you plug into my USB port. She loves plastic stuff. And then the live wouldn't pick up. So welcome, everybody. I'm here. For now, I still have a voice. I have been sick over the weekend, but I did want to keep this because it is National Craft Month. And for the entire month, I've been going live every Monday night with a software tutorial and topic. If you are new here, my name is Ellie Mae with Silhouette Secrets Plus. I am the maker and creator behind the Silhouette Secrets website. I have been teaching Silhouette users since 2016 at in-person events, virtual events, online classes, and I do have step-by-step classes on my Teachable site. I have the Silhouette-Secrets website, which I'll give you a look here. Hello, everybody. Make sure to let us know in the comments and I guess give us a thumbs up if this video is helpful for you. That helps the YouTube algorithms and everything. They love to see the engagement, and then that helps other people get to see the video as well. So welcome, everybody, to this live. I have some designing tips for you. I wanted to give you a look behind the scenes when I am creating a class. So I have a class coming up, and I'm going to switch over here to my share screen. I'm going to share my screen here, if it'll work. So here's a look at my website. It is SilhouetteSecrets.com, and I have at the top of the website a bunch of different headers from requests by users or readers who have been on there for certain topics. One of those topics is the upcoming events tab that I want to highlight here. So I am requested to join in on these events in advance, months in advance. Some of them are 6 months or more in advance. So I may be planning, I'm actually in the editing process of a video right now for August. So there's a lot behind the scenes for events, but I wanted to share with you that they're on my website. I do have what's the save the dates for future events. So like next week, I'm going to do another live. It's the last one of March. March has 5 Mondays in it. So 5 live Silhouette tutorials this month. But in April, I'll be attending Creativation. And then as you go down, registration isn't open for events yet, and we're not allowed to advertise those events. But I have added save the dates to my website so you can get notified, keep that in mind as we get closer to those dates. I also have on my newsletter subscription, which there's a link in the video description below, where you can join the events newsletter. And as soon as events are open for registration, I send out the email, and that goes direct to your inbox. So tonight's live was kind of based on that I am preparing for a class that will be later in June. And for these classes, I have to design the SVG files, and I have to create those myself with designs that I can legally give out. So I can't just use somebody else's design unless I get their permission to, which sometimes that works too, especially for graphics, because I'm not a graphic designer. So let's see, I'm going to go over here to the Silhouette software. So for instance, this is a card design that I created for a card class that I did last year. And I now have this class up on my Teachable site. But I am going to be creating some additional designs for this new event. And I wanted to share a little bit of the behind the scenes process, but also show you some of the tools that I use for designing. And one of those tools is going to be a tool that annoys many, many users. But I'm going to show you what the actual purpose of that tool is. And then maybe it won't be as annoying all the time. So let's go ahead and get started. Does anybody have any questions? So far, we have about 20 in our live. I will be drinking water, so hopefully my voice will last. But I wanted to share some things. I hope this will be very eye-opening in that it is not difficult to design. And undo is your best friend in the software. So my class that I'll be designing for, I need a few different flower shapes. So I want to show you how I'm going to create those. I'm just going to jump over here into the software. If you see me look to the right, so the housekeeping I kind of skipped over, but if you see me look to the right, I do have dual monitors. So YouTube is on my right where I can read your comments. So that's why I look to the right. I also have a brief outline here showing me just to kind of keep on track and what the points I want to make to help you in your design process. So the first one I want to point out is if you have Designer Edition Plus or Business Edition, you have the option on the left-hand side of flexi shapes. And I will also add additional resources to the links of this video or to the video description below after the live for things I talk about. So you can also review those as well. But with flexi shapes, you also have all these additional shapes that you can use to create and design with. And a couple of those are flower shapes. So if you are a Designer Edition Plus or Business Edition, I would just recommend going to Business Edition if you're thinking about it. You have flexi shapes. So if I click on one of these, all of these different flexi shapes have different properties. If I click on that one and then I just click and drag my mouse out, we can see that we have a flower shape. And with this flower shape, there are a couple different control points. So a red control point, this one in particular, will bring in your flower shape for your petals. So it gives you a different look. This flower shape here, this little white control point, is basically just a sizing. You can easily size that up or down. And then in the middle, you have this little slider bar, and there is a number. Let's zoom in here just a little bit. So in the slider bar, there is a number, and that's how many sides. So, or in this case, it's petals, but you can increase that a lot. So right away, you have what could be used as like a sunflower shape. And then you can adjust this even more, coming in here and moving this out and back in. I do want to caution on some of these. When you are creating your designs, I would highly recommend, and it's a part of the process when I'm creating a class, is I have to test cut the files that I create. So in some cases, some of these with these really close together cut lines, that can create tearing with cardstock, or it can be more problematic to cut on materials. Or if you take this shape and you scale it down, that can be even more problematic in your cutting. So some things to keep in mind. I'm going to hit Control Z for undo. Your best friend when you are designing. Keep that in mind when you are designing. And then I'd always recommend, if you're making files in Silhouette, especially if you're giving those to somebody, whether you're selling or just giving them the files, that you test cut those first, because you never know how it's going to test cut or how it's going to work on the materials you're trying to cut with. So first question that I see in there, I am using a version of Silhouette Studio. Let's go up here to Help and About Silhouette. I'm on a Windows computer. If you are on a Mac computer, you can find it in the top left corner under Silhouette Studio. And I'm using 4.5.812. I am recommending, at the moment of this recording, I am recommending 4.5.812 or 815. If you are on an older version and it is working for you, great, stay there. But I am not recommending version 5 at this moment. Version 5 has a lot of issues and it's just too much. We can't even troubleshoot it. There's just too many issues. So we are not. So I need my software to work. I am tired of cussing at it. I need it to work. So I'm using 4.5.812. And that looks like the only question here so far. Okay. So, and I will continue to use the 4.5.812 until some things are fixed and it has been tested for a little bit of time. So it will be a while. You also don't see none of the Silhouette experts actually using 4.5 or doing tutorials on it right now because of all those issues. So I'm not the only one. When you're creating, you have so many options. So even with just one flexi shape, I can create all the way down to this 5 petal, which that's pretty cool. When you have less petals, you can get in a little bit further and come in. If you get too close, of course, your cut lines, they're going to overlap each other or almost overlap. You're going to have it cut basically into itself. So you want to keep that in mind when you are designing, but you can have so many possibilities from just one design and flexi shape. However, not everybody has the option for flexi shapes. While it is a great feature, and as you can see on the left-hand side, you have so many options, different things that you can start with. And when you are creating designs, think of it just like a basic beginner's drawing book. All beginner drawing books start by combining basic shapes, and then they erase lines that overlap. So it is the same way in the Silhouette Studio software. You do have an eraser tool, but it doesn't work quite the same. But you combine those shapes, and when you get to the end result that you want, then you can weld it all together and it's your design, or other options that you need to do for a particular design. There's different, it just depends on what you're creating. So you can see that we even have this little, let's go back here. Let me move this one off. And this one, I would guess, is more like a 4-leaf clover. So you can easily create your own shapes. And once you have them, I noticed there's something funky with this one. Let's zoom in here. I'll show you exactly what I'm looking at while I'm trying to get close to the screen. This one actually is not perfect, which in nature, flowers and 4-leaf clovers are not perfect. But you'll notice that whoever created this actual shape, it's not perfect. If I right click, once you have your design how you want it with a flexi shape, you right click on it and choose convert to path. That takes it out of this editable mode of being able to manipulate it with the sides and moving the inside control point, and it makes it a vector design. Now, if I double click on this, you can see here that on each one of these little like curves, this little edit point here has like a little, it makes like a little hook. Let me zoom in a little bit more and you might be able to see it better on the screen. But it has sort of a little hook. So even in this shape, it's not perfect, which actually is okay. Because how often do you see an entire flower bed full of flowers that are perfect and have nothing wrong, and every single petal is identical and the same size, same shape? It's something I learned when I started working with crepe paper and with Leah Griffith's materials, was that flowers in nature aren't perfect. They're not identical. They're not the same. You might have a bug bite out of one of them. So if you get a little nick out of something or a nick in your paper when you're cutting it, go with it. Sometimes you have to recut, but we do have a question here. I would love to be able to design a t-shirt from scratch that has text and graphics similar to what you would find on Etsy, but I can never seem to be that creative. I've been there. I'm there a lot, actually. I just have to get into the software, and you have to be in the right mindset, I think. Sometimes it's just not going to happen, but you start combining things. Start combining designs that you have the rights to use. Start drawing your own. One thing leads to another. And it may not be perfect the first time, or it may not be what you're looking for the very first time, but keep going. Keep going. It all starts with the basics. So I started to say, when that 4-leaf clover caught my attention, you may not have flexi shapes, and that's okay, because I'm going to show you how you can create your own flower shapes, many flower shapes, by using basic shapes. So basic tools. We're going to start with these tools up here. I'm just going to open a new design mat. I'm actually going to save this, because if I don't, then I may regret it. we'll just save that. It'll take it just a second on my computer because it's saving to an external hard drive. On that note, if you do not, I would highly recommend that you start saving all of your personal files to an external hard drive. Everything. I do not use the Silhouette library for my personal files unless I already have that file saved outside the software. But I would highly recommend you start saving your files. And the way I did that was File, Save As, Save to Hard Drive. So highly recommend that you, if you do not save your personal files currently outside the software, I would highly recommend that you start doing that. It will be a lifesaver. And then, of course, have a backup of that as well. But the first thing is get your files out of the Silhouette library. So I'm going to start on a new design mat here. Let's just open this up as a 12 by 12 so it's all white. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here on the left-hand side. Anyone who has Silhouette Studio has these basic tools. So you have 4 tools that are draw rectangle, rounded rectangle, you have an ellipse tool, and then you have a draw regular polygon. I'm going to grab this ellipse tool, and then I'm simply going to, no particular size or shape, I'm just going to draw an oval. And then I'm going to come in here and zoom in a little bit. And if you can look at this, we already have the basics of a flower petal here. Now, I'm going to make a couple copies. I'll make a copy. I always want to keep a copy of my original. And then I also keep copies along the way. So if I change it and modify it in additional ways, I will keep copies. And what I'll do is if I get more copies, I just kind of pull them off to the left-hand side off my design mat. Now I am going to save this file, save as, just in case. Always good to save your files. You never regret saving your files. You will or may regret not saving your files. So Judy, I'll come back to that here in just a second and let you know what I have. So once I have my oval shape, that can work as a simple flower in itself. I'm going to draw another circle. This time though, I'm going to hold down my shift key and I'm going to draw a circle out that's going to be the center of a flower. And no particular size, I'm just playing around here. And then what I'll do is I'm going to left click and select both of these and then use the align tools in the top quick access toolbar and align the center. Now here's where this little annoying tool comes in. So if I click on this oval shape, I'm going to press my letter O key. And that is going to turn on this little annoying bullseye. Now, most times you don't need it. If I was to try to grab this design and move it, this little bullseye, annoying little thing that it is, moves with it. But it is a very useful tool in working with designs. Now it snaps to the center. So right now it's called the center of rotation. So at this point, my design would rotate around the center of my design. If I grab this little rotate handle, it rotates around the center point. I'm going to undo that. If I move this out here, that is going to, it's now going to rotate around the center point of that. So it's going to look like a little swing. I'm going to hit undo. Hit undo again, and it bounces back to the center point. So wherever you place this little center point is going to be the center of rotation of the object that's selected. So I am going to also grab up here a couple rulers. I'm going to pop this down to the center. And then once it's on for any object that's selected. But I'm just going to pop these guides in here to the center point of my circle. And then I can align this again. Make sure it's aligned. So if I bring this down here to the center of my circle, and then I come over here to my replicate panel. I hope I did this right. I'm actually going to replicate, and let's just choose this one here. It's going to replicate on the center of rotation. So you can see it added 3. Yeah. Okay, I'm laughing at Vanessa's comment. Vanessa says, what? Admitting I thought it was just an annoying tool. Yes, I know. It is annoying. I'm 100% agree. It's annoying. But when you get to designing, just like last week's live, when you get to designing, there are some really cool features in the Silhouette software. So let's get rid of these rulers here just so it's a little bit easier to see on the screen. I just click on it. Once it's blue, I can delete it. So now what I have here is I chose rotate copies. It rotates around the center point of where I place that center of rotation. If I hit undo here, it's going to bring back my rulers. It undoes everything. So let's just delete those again. I just wanted to do that to make sure I had the center point of the circle. If I select this, my center point is still in the middle of the circle. So it's in the middle of my flower. So I can now come over here and I can make additional copies. That's 4 and hit undo. So now I have 5. How is that 5? I have 6. Can't count tonight either. So now you can kind of see this flower shape come together. If I wanted more copies, I'm going to hit undo here. I can come over here to the advanced replicate, second tab at the top, and then I can actually tell it how many number of rotations I want. So if I want, let's say 9 petals, and I hit replicate, is that going to work? It didn't work. I think I have to tell it how many. Okay. Let's see. 9. I think I have to do the angle here. I always just guess. I don't do the math. I just guess. So that's not enough. So now I'm going to undo, go up a couple, hit replicate. Now this one is overlapping just a little, so that's a little too much. So I'll hit undo and hit replicate again. And that's about right. You can get it pretty spot on. Love that. I hate the math. What I like about it is I don't spend the time doing the math. I just play around with it because it doesn't always have to be perfect. So I just go ahead and see what I like. So if I decrease the angle on it, it puts them closer together. If I hit undo, remember I said undo is your best friend. If I go to 35, 34, and it puts it a little bit close together, but what I can do is I can just select one and I can delete it. And then this one, I can kind of just rotate. Oh, there's 2 on top of each other, maybe more on top of each other. That's too many petals. So you can kind of get an idea of, oh, I replicated a bunch on top of each other. Hang on. See, and this is live. This is what happens when I'm designing. When I was hitting that first button 9 times, yeah. Okay, here's what we're going to do. There we go. And I can bring this in here. Kind of still overlaps, which it really depends. It depends on what you're going for, what kind of flower. In this case, once I have that, now I'm done with the center of rotation at the moment. I can go ahead, click on your an object, press O, and it's supposed to toggle it off. But I'm pressing O and it doesn't, which happens all the time, which is one of the reasons that it's really annoying. You can just come down here to the preferences panel. Bottom right corner is a gear icon. And then if you go to, let's see, is it defaults, center of rotation, it actually shows that it's not on. That's weird. Okay, I don't know why it shows that. Let's see if it'll turn off. Stinking software. It's just making a fool out of me. Center of rotation. Let's click apply, okay, and then we'll do it again. apply, okay. Well, that's just weird. Maybe I have to bring it back. Oh, it wouldn't let me because it was in the middle of another object. That's interesting. I've never had that happen before. See how it disappears? Okay, I'm laughing on it. That's just really odd behavior. If I drag it back to the middle, it disappears on the thing. Whatever. All these little things. Okay, anyhow, the center, once you have your flower, let's say this is the perfect flower. This is how we want it. It's not really, but we're going to come in here to the center. If I can grab it again. And then what I would do, darn thing, is I'm going to increase this just a little bit. Boy. Move it so it's kind of overlapping everything. And then I would select everything and weld. Now remember, once you weld, it is permanent, especially if you save the file and close the file. You cannot go back and undo it. So before I do that, I'm going to copy and Control V and paste. And that's a lot of little lines, but I just move it off to the left-hand side and it's there. So even if it's not perfect, I'm going to show you this here with a weld. So we have some of these that overlap. We have a little red dot in the middle there. It's not perfect. That's okay. There's a lot of things you can do in the software to work with it and to change your shapes and to play around with it. The basics of it are to get in and to start playing with the software and start creating with it. So I'm going to just pull that off. We're going to come over here, grab our original, and then let's create another flower shape. And this is what I do when I start to create the class. So if I need 5 different flower shapes, I'm just going to start creating flowers. And the more I create, I make copies, I create more. And then the more I have those to choose from. So some of them are going to be your favorites and some of them are going to be total ones that you want to trash. I still save the file. I don't delete it ever. I hardly delete anything because you just never know where you might want to go back to and start from. So another option that you have, once you have your basic flower shape, you can come in and you can double click on it. And you can start to play with some of these edit points. Maybe I want this petal to be just a little bit longer. And actually what I want, let's start here. Make the tip of it a little bit longer. So I have a little bit different flower shape or petal shape. And then I can, let's turn on that little annoying tool again. Press my letter O, so the center of rotation. I'm just going to pull this down to the bottom of the petal. And in this case, I can come over on the right-hand side and I can choose the replicate panel. And I can choose, let's start with this and see. So then I have a 4, which there's actually a flower that has 4 petals that it's just like this. So I have a 4-petal flower, all based on that center of rotation. And now I'm using flowers as the example tonight because that's what I'm designing for my class. But also think about other designs. Maybe drop those in the comments. What other things can you think of? I have one at the top of my head that I want to share with you that, and I'm writing it down before I forget, that if nobody mentions it, I'll mention it. But what are some other things that you can think of, projects or designs that you can think of that you might use this now that you've seen it in action? So I'm going to choose the rotate 5 copies. Ooh. So there we have our 5 copies. I'm going to make a copy of that. So I always have that original. And then I can select everything. I'm going to press that O key. It did disappear this time. And I'm going to right click and choose weld. And we have another flower shape. Oh, stars, balloons. Okay. So in this case, let's fill this with color. We'll choose yellow for now. If you want to make a layered flower, Control C. Actually, what I'm going to show you is, let's see, I should be able to just rotate. Let's do 1 copy. There we have a rotate copy. It's all the work's already done for you. Let's actually put orange on the color behind it. So now you cut 2 layers, you have a layered flower. If you wanted to do one more layer, let's see here. I don't know why it all turned yellow. That's weird. Oh, I do know. It's underneath. So then I would just take, whoops, take and move this, position it. And what I can do is I'll change the color of that one. So just a matter of rotating your different petals, or you could even take this one, the top one, you can make it smaller. And you have created your own shape. Now these are your own creations. This is something that you, if you were to think about in the future, for me, it's teaching classes. So I'm able to give the files with the class because the events that I teach at in the last 2 years have been all kinds of cutting machine users, anybody who can use an SVG. So they need to be able to use the files, and I need to be able to legally give them to them. So Jackie says borders. So we have stars, balloons, borders. Anybody else have some ideas? I have one other thing I wanted to, actually I have 2 other things I wanted to share with you. So let's zoom out here a little bit. I'll come back. I'm going to grab my original shape. You can see I'm starting with the same basic shape. So that's just one design possibility. Now here, with this flower shape, I'm going to come in, let's zoom in just a little bit closer. I'm going to double click on it again to activate the edit points. And when you have a basic shape, such as a circle or this oval, you would have as simplified of a shape as possible if you have drawn it in the software. If you trace a file, it's not going to be as clean. I am using version 4.5.812. When you double click on a design, you activate what's called edit points. And each one of these edit points has little control points that you can manipulate. And I'll just change it here. You can manipulate this design and you can make it all kinds of different shapes. I'm going to hit undo. You can also change the behavior of it in the point editing panel. You can make them flat, you can make them curved, and that's going to determine what these little blue bezel points do. So depending on that. But what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to click on the line. I'm going to drop a new edit point. And then I'm going to come over to the right-hand side and drop another edit point. And excuse me. And then for this edit point, let's zoom in. So my edit point that I dropped, let's undo that. Oh, it undid the zoom. I want to kind of bring it, again, flowers aren't perfect, so I could have left it, but I'm going to bring it in and bring it about the same. It's still not perfect, but it's going to work. So once I have an edit point on either side of this top one, I can kind of bring this edit point down. And have you ever seen a flower with a petal that has a little notch out of it? Now we've just created, in just a couple steps, a little notch. That's a little bit deep, I think. Zoom in here. A little notch in the end of our flower petal. So there are so many different things that you can do with just one basic shape. And it's really, I don't always have a plan when I start creating. Class creations are a major process for me. Like I said, I'm usually planning classes out 4 to 6 months in advance. And so sometimes I forget what I've created by the time the class comes along. Sorry. My voice is giving out. So let's go ahead and turn this one into a flower. I'm going to press my letter O key again and bring up that little bullseye that most people cuss. And then I'm going to open the replicate panel. And let's see what 5 copies looks like. So we have the 5 copies. I'm actually going to undo that. I'm going to Control C, Control V. Oops. Control V, make a copy. I'm going to pull this over here so we can do something else with it. And then let's make 5 copies. So now my copies are overlapping here. Again, another way to do this is hold your Alt key down and drag a copy away. So I'm just going to make a copy before I weld. Weld is a permanent function. So now if I fill this with color so you can see it a little bit better. Whoops. Select your design first and then fill it with color. So you have a little bit different flower shape. Now, in this case, to me, with that divot at the end, then this is a little bit skinny. That's why I made a copy of this, because I can come over here and I could make my petal just a little bit fatter. And then I would probably come up here and bring this down just a little bit. And now I have a little bit different shape. And then I can come over and I can do the 5 copies again. And now I have a little bit different shape. And I'm just going off of, things I've done in the past. You can actually take photos, go out, look on the internet, look at the photo and see if you can recreate the petal that you see from the flower. Control C, Control V to make a copy. And then I'm going to right click and choose weld. And we can get a little bit of a flower. Let's press O again for taking that center of rotation off. And you have a flower shape with a little indented petal there. So then I can come over here to the basic shapes, grab my draw ellipse tool again. If I hold down my shift key, oh, it picked up the pink. I don't know why I did that. Now I can draw a center. If I center that on screen, now I have a center for the flower. I can cut that out. I can layer it together. If I don't know why I'd want to cut it out. I have one more thing to show you here. Are there any questions? Yes, keyboard shortcut for undo is Control Z on a Windows computer and Command G on a Mac. LMC asks, do you host Zoom classes for small groups of students? I used to have Zoom classes, and I found that it was not worth the cost that it was costing me to do those Zoom classes to have that available. So I stopped. But if there is a need for it in the future, definitely I could look into that again, but it does cost me to host classes. So I do have step-by-step classes on Teachable. Judy says, is there a list of Silhouette shortcuts available? Okay, so we'll stop there and go up here under Help. And if you go to the user's manual, I will tell you this is very outdated, like 6 or 7 years outdated. However, at the very end, it's like page 116, even though it says 118 on it. 116, there is a list of Silhouette shortcuts. Now, not all of those work, and I don't know which ones don't, because not all of them work for Mac. Most of them work for Windows and never change. But sometimes the Mac commands can change based on different things that Mac does with their systems. So just know that that's something that is out there. So what I do is I'll take this, I'll go to page 116, and this is a PDF document. So when I go to print, I will print only page 116. I will tell you that I used to use the manual when I would write my tutorials all the time. And I still reference it sometimes because there's a lot of information that is still good information in here, but it is not up to date. They've added a lot of things to the software, and the user manual was just something that they haven't actually kept up to date. So, but it is still a good reference. If you open it and you want to find a particular keyword, press Control F, and then you can get this little find text or tools and type that in and see what it brings up, so you can jump to different places. Sorry, Teachable. I don't believe that there's a way I can do private lessons, live lessons on Teachable. It's mostly just recorded classes that I can put up there. But if there is a request for a particular class that you'd like, I do take that into consideration and add it to the list of things for having. Here, let me drop the link for my Teachable. You just go in and you purchase each class. There's actually a coupon, should be in the video description as well, but I'll put it up here too. Let's put this in here. My Teachable site. All of my classes are listed here, and the coupon code is 25 for, oh, hold on, 30. No, something's up goofy with my keyboard. I think I need a new keyboard. Oh, hang on a second. It is giving me fits. Coupon code is 25 March, all in capitals, 30. If it will let me type this in. Okay, there we go. It expires on 3/31/25. But there should also be a link in the video description. If not right now, there will be afterwards. So I have one more thing I wanted to share with you. So we've gone over creating a basic design, basic shapes. All from one shape, I created several different flower shapes. I'm going to use this shape again. And what I want to do is I'm going to just make this a little bit fatter, a little bit wider. I guess that's what I should be saying, a little bit wider. And then we'll go ahead. I'm going to press my letter O. Remember, O is for off center of rotation. It doesn't make any sense. H is your crosshairs. So if I press H, if you ever see these little crosshairs, these are the two things that annoy a lot of users, and they get confused with the shortcuts. So H is the crosshairs, which follow your cursor. I know some people like to use them. I don't like them. O is for the center of rotation. So that turns on that little bullseye in the middle that you grab when you're trying to select your object and you don't want to. But the useful tool is to be able to rotate around a different center point than the middle of your design. Excuse me. So I'm going to come out here. I'm just going to make, let's see, 5. That looks perfect to me. So I just made my shape a little wider. I'm going to go ahead with it selected. I'm going to press the letter O key to turn that off. And then I'm going to make a copy, just so I have that original copy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose weld. So now we have our basic shape. And let's fill this with some color. That is actually, I really like that. I might have to use that in my class. This one is, right now it's at 3 by 3.5. And for my class, it's going to be, I'm going to give you a little heads up. It's going to be on a card. So it's actually going to be about that size, maybe a little less. That actually might be perfect. I think I have a design for the class. I'm just going to save this file so I have it and I don't have to go back and do all the work. I really like that design. See, and I get excited. Sorry, I get excited when I do happy dances. When things turn out, I do, it's not always right the first time. And sometimes you have to leave and come back. So, and look how many I did create, how many we created tonight. And it was the last one that turned out like that's going to work perfect for my card design. So stay tuned on the upcoming events on the Silhouette Secrets website and get signed up for the newsletter, the events email, if you want to be notified of that, because you'll see that design again. I'm liking that. I really like that. So I'll just do a couple more here. And then you just cut them out of whatever cardstock you want. You're getting a little bit of a glimpse here. Make a bunch of those and you got a bouquet. So, okay, now that's not what I wanted to show you. So here I have a flower shape that I could cut out of cardstock. I could make a layered flower. I could, cut it out of whatever material. Heat transfer vinyl, you could add it to a shirt. If I wanted to, I'm going to come out here. I'm going to make an offset of this. So just using one additional tool in the Silhouette Studio software, I now have an offset. This offset is just 0.095. It actually looks good to me. I'm going to zoom in here. When I hit zoom, it took it off the offset. It applied that offset, which is okay. I like it. If I want, I can left click and drag this around. What if I don't want that solid flower? What if I want a frame of the flower? I'm going to right click with both of them selected. I'm going to choose make compound path. And then I'm going to fill it with color. Now I have the outline of a flower. Let's take this one step further. This is more than I was going to get into tonight, but it just popped into my head. I'm going to open up a new design mat. I'm going to Control C, go to a new design mat, Control V. Okay, let's just play around with this a little bit. Let's go over here to the replicate panel. And an easy way to replicate is I can use this row of 3, make a row. Benita says they love the outline flower. It's pretty cool. I like it. So what I did, here, let me undo that because I did it while I was talking. Let's zoom in here. When you replicate, it replicates it exactly to the right. So I picked to the right 2 copies and it puts it right on the line. You could cut it this way. If you were to cut and wanted 3 outlines, it should work because they are not overlapping. However, when you are cutting certain materials and it is this close, sometimes that can be just a little bit too close and it will drag your materials. So if I'm cutting these individually, I would move these over just a little bit and left click, drag across everything. And then I'm going to use these align, the spacing tools, the horizontal, and I'll just space those out. So each of them has a little bit of a margin. I'm not wasting any more materials. And in fact, I'm actually saving materials because if those were cut, that close together and my material catches and tears, then I may be out the entire sheet of material because it caught and it tore. So that isn't what I wanted to show you though. But that's one thing. If I'm cutting them individually, that's what I do. In this case, I want to show you, I'm just going to use my arrow keys, my left arrow key. I'm moving this over to be overlapping a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. Just overlap it. And then to get it perfectly even, I can left click and drag across everything and then use that horizontal spacing again. It barely moved. I barely saw it on the screen. But once I have those overlapping, if I left click, drag across everything, and then right click and weld, now I have a design. I could make this a whole page background if I wanted to. Oh, looks like I have a little artifact. Look at that. I have a little artifact in there. Where all of those met, and I wouldn't see this when it was this small. I can't see that in there. This is on my previous file. At that size, it doesn't show up. But when I enlarge that design, now I have this little artifact. Artifact, it's just a term I actually picked up from another instructor. It's basically those little dots, things that blade is actually going to cut. Here, I'll highlight all of these little dots. Your blade is actually going to cut that little dot. if you were to cut it at this size. So an artifact, what I think of as the artifact is those are usually things that you want to get rid of. So these little artifacts, I would just highlight them like they are on my screen and I would delete it. But it's interesting that it didn't show up until I enlarged that file. So it's, I mean, I don't know. What else would you call them? Like little extra dots. Ever since I heard the term artifact, that's what I call them. LMC says, I've installed the new upgrade to Studio 5 for Business Edition. Are there big differences between your version and the new? I ask because I want to purchase Teachable classes for Studio. Yes, there are big differences. And I mentioned it at the beginning, but I'm not using or troubleshooting on version 5 yet because there are a lot of issues. I would highly recommend that you go back and reinstall version 4.5.812. But if you want to continue with that, just know that there are issues. And if you run into those, it may not be you. It may be the software. So all of my classes currently on Teachable are taught in version 4.5, like in the older, what you see on the screen right now. Speckle or strays, okay? Same thing. Just like copy and paste in the Silhouette Studio software, there's about 10 different ways you can do it. Strays in the embroidery software, okay? Yep. Whatever you call them, they can be annoying. And they don't show up until you enlarge that file. Let's close this. Actually, I need the replicate panel. Let's zoom out a little bit. So I have this file here. If I enlarge that just a little bit, I'm going to make another copy. I'm going to duplicate it down. Let's see how many more I can get. Can I fill a page? Not quite. It's going to be a little bit too big. You'll get the idea. Let's just shrink this down. Ooh, that would actually be a good card base, like a background for a card. So we'll just work with this. Since I replicated, it's right on the line. So all I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this bottom one, use my up arrow key on my keyboard and bump that up a couple. And then if I left click and drag across everything, I can use that vertical spacing. And then they should all be overlapping and I can right click and choose weld. And of course, I would highly recommend copies along the way. But now you have your own little design that you've created. You could use this, cut it out for the background on a card. Let's see, if I come over here, I'm just going to draw a rectangle and come up to my aspect, lock aspect and unlock it. Change this to a regular card size, 4.25 by 5.5. And let's fill this with gray because you can't see white. And then it's in front, so I'm going to right click and choose send to back. And this might not cut quite as well. I would design it a little bit bigger, I think. The frame a little bit wider, but might work. I might have to test it. Center that. And you have a little bit of a card element. The only thing I would recommend, since I played around with some different sizes here, is that when you make your outline, let me go back to this file. When you make your outline and you add your offset and you make your outline, this is created at about 3.2 by 3.7 inches. When you scale that down, you're going to be shrinking the distance of this offset. So if you get too thin when you scale it down, that can be problematic with designing. So it's always easier to scale up with certain things, but scaling down, you can get into some sizing and cut issues the more you do it. Teresa says she's always called them artifacts because they're after the fact. That's pretty good. Vanessa asked, were they from the annoying tool? So here, let's do a little bit of a test because they didn't show up until I enlarged that file. So what I did was I copied this original and I pasted it to the new file. Now here, my design is selected and there's nothing here. I don't know if I've ever seen this happen before. And then, there's nothing there still. I wonder how they came out. Okay, let's recreate it. So I copied it and I pasted it. I'm hitting undo. And all I did was I used the replicate panel and I made 2 copies. Oh, that's 3. I made 2 copies. Clicked off of it. And then I believe I came in here and zoomed in. And then I bumped this over a little bit to show you the margins. And I did the horizontal spacing. And now you're seeing what Teresa's on here. Tony, I saw Tony on here. This is what we do when we troubleshoot. When we're trying to recreate an issue, is we have to just go through the steps and see where or why something happened. Okay, so that was the horizontal spacing. I hit undo, moved that back over, and then I moved them overlapping. And I did the horizontal spacing again before I welded. But I think they showed up before I welded. Let's see. We'll find out here. Right click and weld. Nope. Okay, I don't know why. So they showed up after I welded those shapes. But I don't know why. I see Tony's on here. Maybe he knows. Okay, I'm going to hit undo. So this is before it's welded. That's interesting. Sometimes there's just no explanation. I think they are from when you welded the petals, but there's nothing showing in there right now. Like it's empty. Let's see. Right click and choose weld, and those artifacts show up. And they're artifacts. They just come out of nowhere, I guess. That's got me stumped. I'll have to see, because they are not in the original shape. Let me try something else. Let's hit undo. Oh, I'll come back to this original shape. We'll just move it out here. So if I right click and I choose release compound path, now I have my 2 flowers. And even with edit points activated on both of them, oh, there it is. That is where it came from. That's on the offset. There's a little dot in the middle of the offset. So we found out where, I don't know why when I created the offset it did that. Let's go back to my original. Yeah, aha, from the offset. Here is the very original. Now there is, in this one there is, but once we made the welding, it should have disappeared. So it is that little center point, but it doesn't show up on the original, but it shows up on the offset, which is very interesting. So we found it, working through it. Okay. I'm going to, just because out of curiosity, I have to do it. Weld. Now it has a little dot there, but it doesn't have a little dot here. Okay, so we found it. Now you know how to investigate, troubleshoot, find it. And if you put a little circle like we started with in the very beginning, in the middle for your center of rotation, then you'll end up with a circle in the middle that'll be welded into it. As long as it's not outside of your petals there, you would never see it. But yeah, so do we have any other questions? We made some flower designs. We made some flower frames. We investigated an issue where there was a little red dot. Yep. And we started with our flexi shapes. So this is the design, a card design I created for a class that I do have out there on Teachable that I taught last year at an event. And all of these flower shapes, I can just pull this card design apart. So this flower shape is grouped. I'm going to ungroup it. We have a circle. We have one shape. We have a larger that is identical, and then an even larger background. So if I undo that, you can see how this flower goes together. And I will put these together on my screen before I even cut them to see how the card would look. So a circle, and this is just created by 2 layers of the flower shape. You can see there's a circle here in the middle. If I hit undo, stack those on, and it's just the same layer rotated. I did make the flower stems. That was an interesting. Do you want to see how? I'm willing to show, if you guys want to see how I did that. I'll try to remember. I do show it in the class, but it was a very interesting way to do it. Okay, Corey says yes. Okay, so let's just take this. I'm going to take it over here. This one took me a little while to figure out because it really is I started with just a straight line. Okay, so if you can look at the design and see that it's just lines and circles. So I started with a circle for the ends. So just a small circle, hold my shift key down and it'll make a perfect circle. I'll turn that one brown. And then for the leaf shape, I wanted a shape that was random, that was, a branch. So I came over here to the draw line tool, and you could use either your draw straight line or polygon, either one of these. So this one is a draw polygon. It does straighter lines between your points. This one, you have some curves. So if you come and let's just choose that one. I'm going to left click, it's going to drop a point, and each time you drop a point, and then you can curve this line. The other option is going to give you straight lines. So if I just drop another point and then right click, double click on it to end the point. So now I have the basics of my branch. And a line that does not connect, this is just going to cut a slice through whatever material you are cutting. So unless it's a complete shape where the dots connect, literally the Silhouette machine connects the dots, or any plotting machine connects the dots. So it has to, in order to cut a complete shape like a circle, which has complete dots here, it needs to close. But that's not what I want. I want a branch shape. So what I did was I took this, I believe, hopefully this is how I did it. And not that line thing. I'm going to increase let's go over to the line style panel. It'll be easier to see. So line thickness, I'm opening the line style panel on the right-hand side. And then increase the line thickness. My version of software doesn't have the little arrows on the right side. That is a bug. I'm just going to increase this line thickness, and let's turn this to black. Now, when you increase, that's my fill color, line thickness is here. When you increase line thickness, I want to point this out here. It's not going to cut around that line unless I tell it to. If I zoom in on this line, increasing line thickness is a visual thing only. As you can see here, I have increased the line thickness around this line. Let's see if I can get it a little bit. But my red cut line is still just going to cut a slice right down the middle of that line. If you were cutting this, you can tell the software to cut edge, and then it should cut the edge of the line. However, for my design, that's not going to work because I'm going to be combining it with something. So what I did was I came in here, and I believe what I did, it's been a year since I created this class. I believe I traced it. And that's why I turned it all black, is I'm just going to select this trace area. There's multiple ways you could do this. You might be able to do an offset, but I don't know. I can test that in just a second. And then I just increased the threshold as much for that to turn yellow, which was 100%, and click trace. That gives me a rough trace line. If I double click on that, you're going to see it's really rough. So then I just simplified this. And because it's a branch, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's a little wonky for me, but you can play around with it. So then I did the same thing with all the lines. Now let's go back here because I'm curious. So here is my original line with the thickness. If I create the offset, let's see, it will give me and maybe that's what I did. It gives me a little bit smoother line. So you can do an offset, a really small offset of that line. When I click apply, that is much cleaner than my trace. But it depends on what you want. If you want a really wonky branch, this would work. So there are always usually multiple ways you can do something in the software. And then I did the same thing for these little branches. So I just grabbed this, and in this case, some of them are a little bit curved. So I'll grab this, draw curve shape again. And if I click here and then just make a little small double click on it, and then I'll follow the same steps. I'll just pull that away so you can see it. I'm going to increase the line thickness. So line thickness is on the right-hand side, or the line thickness is over here, and I can increase that. Just depends on what thickness you want it to be. And then if you're using offset, you don't have to change it to black. Click offset. Mine is going to remember the last offset that I used. And then I have my little branch shape, and that might be a little bit thick. But then I just added it on top, add my little circle. It's behind everything. I can bring that to the front. And I just did that all the way around. It's going to be a very symmetrical branch. And then before I weld it, I Control-C, Control-V, and make a copy. And then I weld. Whoops, I hit the wrong button. Offset is also on a right-click menu. Undo, undo. Right-click, choose weld. And I have my little branch shape. So, do we have any other questions? Let me see here. I will, so you don't see my messy files. Let me see if I can show you a visual of my working file on that, so you get an idea of how crazy it is sometimes. I taught that in March of last year. And I'm just pulling it off my, let's see. I'll give you, maybe this is it. Is this it? I'll open this file up and see what happens. So this is one of my design files from that class last year. Yes, Judy, I will grab the link here. Judy asked what external hard drives I am using. So I have had a couple in my lifetime, and external hard drives can fail. I have had one fail. I lost 8 months of work because I did not have it backed up as often as I should have. And so now I have 2 of these. It really just depends on the amount of storage you need. These currently are 4 terabytes, which is a lot for an average user. Let's see. It doesn't look like they're available. But mine are Toshiba. Let's see if the other one's available. I'm looking here. I ordered these in 2023. Actually, this one is available. I'll grab the link. You may not need this much of a hard drive. This is a lot of space. I hate to say it, but I've almost filled this up. But what I can say is I would recommend a brand name, Toshiba. I've had a Western, and mine have lasted years. My last one did fail, and it traveled with me sometimes, but at the time that it failed, I hadn't been going anywhere, and it was just sitting on my desk. It didn't have any damage. Yeah, I mean, I think anything electronic can fail. So the best thing right now, I have two. So I have two plugged in. I have my main working one, and then I back up to another one. For most users, 1 terabyte is probably enough. But with the blog posts and the classes and the videos I do, it can be a lot. And I've also looked at some other types of storage too. It really just depends on how many files you have and what you're using them for. So this is a look at one of my design files while I was creating that class. And you can see that, they are all kinds of different shapes. I was playing around with some leaf shapes here. So that's just one. I have another one. Maybe this is the same one. Okay, that's the preview of all those files. Let's see. The Just a Note card. Here's the diagram I did. So here's the different, for somebody who was hand cutting it. I'm trying to find my working file. What I'm trying to show you is that the first one may not be the ideal design, but the more you do it, you may like some better than others. Different flower shapes, different colors, play around, test with it. Let me see the questions here. I'm going to stop screen sharing. And can we save to an SD card? Yes, but most SD cards are very low on storage or very little. Now there are thumb drives. I even have some thumb drives here that are 32. I think these are 32 ones. So you can get larger flash drives. SD cards, it's kind of old technology. So if you're in a pinch, use it. But I would recommend something that's a little bit larger and newer. Sandy asked, are they easy to install? You just plug it in. Sometimes they'll come with their own little programs that they, set up on the external hard drive for backup and stuff. But you just basically plug them in. And then I'll show you here. If I go to, let's go to one of these files. If I go to File, Save As, Save to Hard Drive, what you can see over here is I actually have both of mine plugged in right now. I try to remember to unplug my main backup one so that it's not always connected. And if something should happen, but it lists them as Toshiba E and Toshiba F. And I save to my external hard drive so that my computer is cleaner, even though it's getting full too. Newsfan says, I seem to get confused with compound paths and what happens when you release them. I have a great video for you. Let me grab that here. I did a very extensive live on that as well. And the best way to get in and play with compound paths, just get in there and start playing with them. See what they can do, press undo. But here is a link to my previous video on compound paths. It was called Demystify Compound Paths. And we played around with them a lot. Oh, yes. And Teresa brings up a very good point. Mac users may have to format external hard drives, which is a very simple process. So if you are a Mac user, you do want to make sure, most of them nowadays are, but you do want to make sure that it is compatible with a Mac. And once it's formatted for a Mac, typically, maybe it's changed, but you can't just take it from a Mac and plug it into a Windows computer. Once it's formatted for a Mac, only a Mac will read that. Maybe something's changed, but that's how it used to be at least. I am a Windows user. Teresa is a Mac user. So, okay. Any other questions that you guys have while I am here? Hopefully you picked up a few things. Get in the software, play around with it, use that little annoying, let's just pop back over here. And use that little annoying tool called offset. Little annoying bugger that gets a lot of people to cuss, but center of rotation. We used offset too, but center of rotation. Have fun with it. Play around with it. The one thing I was going to say, nobody said it, so I will. A mandala design. You could create all kinds of different shapes and designs with center of rotation. A mandala design is like replicated multiple times around. And if you're using the center of rotation, it doesn't have to be the center point at the bottom of a petal. It could be in the middle of a circle that's below it, as we saw in the beginning. So think about that. Think about some ways that you could use these tools in projects. So Lynette says, another very informative session. Thank you, Ellie Mae. I will go back and watch from the beginning once this is finished. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. And if nothing changes my schedule, I will be back next Monday for another live. After that, it will go back to the third Monday because I will be gone to Creativation in Seattle for the beginning of April. So, and Benita says, thumbs up. If you learned something in this tutorial and you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining in. Have a great night.